Hi everyone, Pierre Paul Tejon here, Canada's multifamily mortgage broker. That's right, I'm now a licensed mortgage broker specializing only in multifamily properties, of course. And you probably know a former CMHC multifamily underwriter and a full-time multifamily investor. I think I knew a thing or two about multifamily investing. And as such, I'm super stoked today to come to you with another episode of the Canadian Multifamily Investing Insider Blog. I apologize. It's been a while since I've broadcasted a post, but guess what? Now that I'm in the trenches day in day out as a mortgage broker, count on me to have some pretty cool stuff, content, including today's post on ESA's environmental site assessments. It's an interview with Michael Schurek of Schurek Resources, somebody I've known for a long time, and his dad. They've done most of my ESA's, environmental site assessments for my properties, which is an essential component when you apply for financing. And something else as well, I've got a free masterclass series starting this Wednesday, April the 10th, running until May 22nd on various topics, critical and key topics for those of you who want to invest in multifamily properties. In the meantime, go out there and be the master of your fate and captain of your soul, and enjoy the interview with Michael Schurek on environmental site assessments. I'll see you on the inside. Cheers. Hi, everybody. Pierre Paul here. I'm super stoked today to be with Michael Schurek of Schurek Resources, Schurek Resources Limited. Michael, I've known Michael for quite a while. His dad a lot longer, actually. Marty Schurek. They provide. It's an engineering company that provides environmental site assessments for multifamily investors, such as myself and probably many of you watching. So the purpose. So first of all, Michael, thank you so much for being here with me, sharing your knowledge on environmental site assessments, and let's call them ESAs right up front. Right, to cut it short. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here today.
Well, thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate it.
And like I said, I really look up to you and your dad. Like I said, I've known you for a long, long time in different capacities. When I was an underwriter at CMHC, obviously, and now in my capacity as an investor myself. So basically, the purpose of this interview, give an idea, Michael, what an ESA is for, what's entailed, limitations, because there are limitations to what you do as well, so that people, how you do those ESAs, what the process is, so that people understand at a high level.
Sure.
And then they can always hire you as an expert. So let's start. What is, Michael, an environmental site assessment, an ESA, and the different phases that there are for ESAs?
Yeah, sure. The initial phase, the phase one ESA, is used as a I guess reducing the uncertainty with potential environmental concerns. It's also a time where you're able to go and set the baseline environmental condition of any site, and it is used particularly with transactions, because there's the potential for uncertainty when you're purchasing a building, and the ESA phase one will be that starting point. It's also the initial step in site remediation. So we start with a phase one ESA, which is looking at the gathering of relevant information and looking for any potential concerns. If concerns are identified, and that could even just be the lack of information, we then move to a phase two, which is invasive. So we're drilling, and we're doing soil samples.
And Michael, maybe something I should have said in the introduction. People need to understand, when you buy an apartment building, an ESA phase one is absolutely required, regardless of whether you go CMHC insured financing or conventional financing. So I want to make sure that that's why we're here discussing this. It's an important, one of the initial, as you said, steps in purchasing and investing in an apartment building. Yeah.
Well, definitely, because if you don't go through this step, the potential, for finding contamination is great, and the amount of liability is quite large, but also too, you are investing money, and the fact that remediation, if there is contamination that is found on the site, is very, very expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and phase one, how do you conduct? So there are three phases. I'll just recap, Michael. So the first
Sure.
one is non-invasive, right? And
Non-invasive.
my next question is for you to explain to the people, to the audience, how it's done.
Yep.
If there's an issue found, then you move on to a phase two, which is invasive. If I recall correctly, in my days at CMHC, because I've faced that a couple of times, you bore a hole in the ground or something like that, right? And then a phase three would be what?
A phase three would be site remediation.
Okay.
So this is where we're actually going in and remediating the site, and a lot of the times we're only remediating the site to the property lines. A lot of times the source of the contamination is from an adjacent property or nearby property.
That's interesting. Only to the property line. So, okay, let's circle back to that. So
Yeah.
how do you conduct the phase one, which is normally you'll hope, and by the way, Michael, you don't know this, but when I teach this stuff, I'm pretty opinionated is an understatement, but I tell it the way it is based on my experience of some disasters that I've seen at CMHC, by the way, right? Because my job is to teach people, my students, to avoid these costs and mistakes. So how do you conduct a phase one, which again is a non-invasive kind of study or site assessment?
Yeah, there are four principles, four important I guess portions of a phase one ESA, and that is the records review. So we're looking at land titles, we're looking at if there was any commercial activity on the site. We're also going and looking at aerial photographs and such. And when it comes to the report, we're following the CSA standard, and our report actually follows the CSA standard to a T. And so when we're doing the report itself, if anything is removed or omitted from the report, most of the time that goes into the limitations area. But the thing is, if you are reviewing a report, there are no limitations and there are things missing like site photographs, aerial photographs. This is not a phase one ESA because it does not follow the CSA standard.
And CSA, just as a reminder, Michael, is Canadian Standard Association.
That's correct.
Something that we see on objects sometimes and stuff like that. Electrical, namely, is what I'm thinking of, but there's a specific standard. As an aside, Michael, we didn't discuss that before the interview, but I used to remember we used to tell investors, or in the case lenders, the specific CSA standard that was required, right? There is a specific CSA. Can you tell us what it is? And it is, I'm assuming, across Canada, since it's the Canadian Standard Association, right?
Yes.
What CSA is it standard?
Yeah, so the CSA standard that we are using at the moment was last revised in 2016, and the CSA standard establishes what we are looking for with the ESA. And so with the records review, with a site visit, with interviews, and then finishing on with the evaluation of the information and actually preparing the report, that is concisely what is involved. But going and diving into it, interviews are very important because we need to speak with somebody that has knowledge of the property. And so that could be a property owner, that could be a tenant, that could be a property manager, and even a local official from the municipality or from the province. But the one thing is that I'm speaking directly about ESAs that are being conducted in Alberta. There are other requirements based in other provinces and municipalities. So it's very important to understand, the requirements of an ESA and what is needed, because an ESA for financing is quite different from an ESA for say rezoning or if you're going and subdividing a property, which a lot of investors are doing now. They see raw land and they see an opportunity to to generate some revenue by subdividing. Well, that's a completely different report because it goes and follows a structure set by the municipality, being here in Edmonton, the city of Edmonton. And it does take longer for us to do. It also requires hard copies. It's just not a digital copy that has to be submitted. So those are things that you need to, I guess, to determine and to do your own information gathering to be able to provide to us what is needed, because we don't know. We're the ones that we do not speak to the developer. We do not speak to the city planner, but we will follow up with them just for confirmation.
Okay, and Michael, if I may, for the purpose of this conversation, this interview, let's focus on the ESA for the purpose of financing, financing a multifamily property.
Okay.
So just to recap, you conduct aerial surveys. I remember because in your reports, I have several of your reports, aerial pictures of the property. You talk to me, you talk to the property manager as well about what's been going on. You go through a title search, review what was there before. A lot of these buildings, if we focus again in Edmonton or other jurisdictions in Canada, they're infills, right? They're used to, they were not originally apartment buildings. So you go through a title search to see what else might have been on site that could have potentially caused a contamination of the site, correct?
Yes, and a lot of the times we're just looking for commercial activity. Residential dwellings and such are not as much of a risk, environmental risk, but you never know when an adjacent property, say a residential dwelling, had a backyard automotive repair facility or something like that. And so that's important during our site visit, that we do walk around and look at the various adjacent properties in the area.
And one tip I give, you and I used to work with a building inspector that unfortunately passed away recently, but his son has taken over, just like you and your dad. And one tip that I give my students, hopefully you agree with it, but you don't have to, but I usually, when I call upon a building inspector to show up, I like to call the engineer as well to do the ESA at the same time, right? I think that works well. It's less disturbance to the tenants, if any. I mean, I'm trying to remember, you don't have to see any of the units, or you do like to see some of the units within the apartment building, Michael? Do you or not?
I like to see a minimum of a 1 unit per floor. It's important to see what's going on in the basement, to see if there's any moisture or anything coming through the foundation, as well on the second floor or in between floors. It's just good to see if there are any staining on the ceiling or on the floor. And the important is upstairs, because if there are any water leaks coming through, we would be able to most likely see them in the ceiling with staining and such.
Okay, so you do see some units, but again, the tip here that I'm giving people is try to have the engineer and the building inspector together, because they work well together. They can feed each other as well in terms of comments and observations. And it's also less disturbance to the tenants, right? If you're gonna bring people in at once, you might as well. Okay, and phase 2, tell us a little bit. I think I kind of said it a few minutes ago, but the phase 2, first of all, here's my advice to my students. Michael, you may not know this, but if you get a phase 1 ESA that doesn't come back clean, and I think you said to me, I shouldn't call it clean. You remind me what it is that you said when we were planning for this interview, but in my words, if it doesn't come back clean, my advice to my students is walk away from the property, because if you get, I should say that, but be careful at least. I'm going to rephrase my advice. Be careful if there's an issue discovered at the phase 1, because it can be very, very costly to remediate. So, but when an ESA is required in the process of investing in apartment buildings, when are people calling on you to conduct an ESA? Michael, what phase of the process?
Well, usually they're calling
for financing purposes always, right? By the way.
Yeah, and it's usually when they have a contract signed, for the property, and what I feel is that is even still a little too late. Our standard turnaround time is 15 to 20 business days for a phase 1 ESA. We can get them out quicker, but that is what we quote, because when we're preparing a quote, we're looking at the number of the suites, we're not going and investigating yet with potential concerns. We do have an idea based on the location of the property, based on the separation between it and commercial use or the surrounding areas. But as soon as possible, because you want us to give us the lead time. The unfortunate part, when people come and ask for a 1 week report, we have to look at the liability on our side, because there are certain records that we need to pull, like say Alberta Health Services, where we're finding out to see if there are any health orders on the property and such. And the thing is, what we're looking for, we're just not looking with Alberta Health Services to see if there's mold. It's about humans living in these buildings, and they're also a receptor, no different than the plant life around the property.
Yeah, I would phrase it differently a little bit. What I've got when I teach, I've got this chart that tells you what you need to do in terms of steps as you have an accepted offer on a property. What I say, Michael, it's a nuance to what you're saying, but I want to be congruent. I say, don't hire the engineer for the ESA yet. First, do your walkthrough. You could do your walkthrough with your property manager. As you know, you and I know property managers that have been in the business for a long time. They have a good sense of, of giving you comments where you conduct your walkthrough without paying for a professional building inspector. If you're not scared away by the property, then you hire a property building inspector. If the results come back decent about the property, you're not scared away by the property, then call on an engineer to conduct the ESA. So trying to avoid spending money, because let's say UAC comes back dirty, and you need to correct me. I'm not using the proper terminology, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's the potential for contamination.
Was that?
Potential for contamination.
Yeah, potential for contamination, but you want to avoid spending money needlessly if you're not going to close on the deal. So what I tell my students, though, you to make your point, mind you, find out in advance how long is it going to take me to get my ESA, so that you can factor in the time frame that you require to get your ESA, as well as financing. So that's the kind of stuff I've got here, Michael. And of course, these timelines will change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But
yeah, and maybe something that I could just add, if that is the route that the purchaser or the, I guess, the investor is going, really when they're doing that initial walkthrough, look at for some obvious signs, that would potentially slow up an assessor like myself, or a building condition assessor or inspector, is look for friable material. If there's drywall dust where there shouldn't be drywall dust, well, when I see that is friable material to me. And based on the age of the building, I will be asking for an asbestos survey. It doesn't matter. It's friable material. It has not been identified as is, but containing asbestos, but there is the potential. And that's something that all they have to do is go and look and rectify the situation before we come, because those are things that do hold us up in the assessment, is if the information we're asking for is not received. And sometimes that spurs other questions. So it's important for investors to look at the condition of the property and to let us know the condition before going into the property as well, because we come into some very messy situations that we will not even attempt to go in because of our own health and safety.
Okay, and when you say friable material, can you give us an example what it would look like?
Friable material is any type of material that can be airborne. So drywall dust, from in corners, flooring, like the vermiculite tiles, if those are peeling up and such, that is friable material, and it does have the potential to contain asbestos. The big thing is looking at dates, and here in Alberta, anything built before 1990, Alberta Health Services says that it has the potential to contain asbestos. And so that's something that we base it on. New builds, it's rare that you would find asbestos in a new build, or anything built after 1990. but it
And I
still
don't want people
happens.
to freak out over asbestos.
Yeah,
I own buildings, as you well know, that are built in the 60s,
yeah,
some of them newer.
yeah,
It's not uncommon to find
yeah,
asbestos.
yeah,
Very often, as you said, the tiles were made of asbestos.
yeah,
But the key thing is if it's not disturbed,
yeah,
and oftentimes what's happened to my properties, a few of them anyways, they built up flooring on top of the
yeah,
those asbestos tiles. And if it's not moved,
yeah.
that is not a concern. Is that a fair statement? That's my
Yeah, so that,
understanding,
that
my
is a fair
experience.
statement. Yeah, and the province of Alberta has an asbestos abatement manual, and in there they do discuss an asbestos management plan, which gives you options, because a lot of the time encapsulation is the best route, because to go and do asbestos abatement, it actually can cause further damage because of the removal of certain materials and the generation of dust. So that's where we look at encapsulation is a good route. So that could be anything from stippling on a wall to even an old boiler in the utility room, where a new boiler is coming in, and they take the old boiler and encapsulate it into the wall.
Yeah. And I want to share a quick story. I had a building that burned, not entirely, the shell still remained, but it was quite significant. It was a $3.4 million renovation,
Yeah.
luckily paid by the insurance company, but they discovered asbestos in the walls and ceilings. So down came all the walls and ceilings, and one room at a time. And each room was completely sealed off, like I mean, with
Yes.
the tape.
Yeah.
When we talk about abatement, that's the name for the way of remediating and removing asbestos
Mhm.
with, I don't know, I call them hazmat suits, right? With the
Definitely.
hood and one
Yeah.
piece suit and the tape around the face and the mask. It was
Yeah.
quite something else. And then the way it was disposed with a lot of care. So
Yeah.
it's quite an endeavor.
It is definitely.
But that's an extreme extent. But I mean, it
It
could
is.
lead to that. So you got to be
There's
mindful.
potential.
And oftentimes, Michael, it's not uncommon to find around the pipes for the boiler some kind of tape
Yeah.
containing asbestos. I mean, you can explain a little bit better than me, right? Can you
Yes.
speak to that?
Sure. So there's insulation pipe wrap, and the what we're actually looking for are the corners, the elbows of the pipe wrap, and what it is, it's more of a mud material, almost like a cast, and that material is has a very high potential for containing asbestos. And a lot of times when I'm going into buildings, like say in this past year, what I'm going in and seeing is that there is no insulation on the elbows. And that is because at some point remediation and abatement took place, and they removed the elbow. So that's the concern. It's the elbow, not so much the insulation running on the pipe itself, but the elbow. That's of concern.
Why? Because it's more fragile. Is that the idea?
Because it is like usually the pipe itself is wrapped in some type of fiberglass
Yeah.
or fibrous material, where on the elbow itself is more of a mud material, which has the potential to with vibration in the lines to start deteriorating. And again, it should be removed at some point.
Okay.
And a lot of the times, it's already been removed by time we're
Okay.
coming in.
But let's say it weren't, and I don't want to spend too much time on that, but if it hasn't, it's not a big deal to remediate that. You obviously can take precaution, close the boiler room, like, and just remove it with, again, somebody wearing a mask and all of
Yeah.
that jazz, right? It's not a major endeavor to
Well,
remediate.
yeah, all that I would say is that follow the provincial regulations in place. That is we're not experts in asbestos removal.
Yeah, of course, that's not your job.
But the thing is, we can identify within the CSA standard, we are to look for friable material. And it's at that point we need to advise the client on what the potential for contamination is. And that's the thing with the phase one. There is no analysis done. It's only investigation and the gathering of information.
Yeah, and that's part of the limitations of your report, right? We need to spell that out, and that's in your report.
Yeah.
Uh, Michael, why are historical photos used, and where do you find them?
Sure. Historical photos are in Edmonton are found through the City of Edmonton archives. A lot of times you'll be able to find them online now. In the past, we actually physically had to go into the archive, scan the photos, and to be able to use them. The reason for aerial photographs is it shows not only the site development, but it also shows the area development. And when you're looking back at the 1800s, or sorry, the 1900s, we're also looking at the development of certain areas within the city. So in Edmonton in particular, we have areas where over the development that ravines, valleys have been, and creeks have been filled in. Well, what did they fill them in with? A
Okay.
lot of them were landfills. And that is something that we need to look at. Not only that, but also to understand groundwater flow, because you may see a street in front completely flat. Well, based on aerial photographs and topographical maps, we can see if there was a change in topography, understanding which way groundwater flows, and then the potential of flow of contamination. So that too, with the aerial photographs, we're also looking at the structures on the site. So you'll see in our reports that we will go and have an aerial photograph prior to construction and then after construction. So if there's any change on the site, there will be an aerial photograph that identifies that change. And we like to use aerial photographs anywhere from 10 to 13 years apart. Particularly here in Edmonton, I want to say that it's quite a young city. So we can go back to usually about 1929 and feel comfortable by seeing either agricultural land or by seeing residential homes.
Very cool. What findings would recommend a phase two in your experience?
Well, anytime that there's a lack of information about a property, or during our search we see mention of gas stations adjacent or nearby, dry cleaners are probably the worst, I guess, polluters or sources of contamination, particularly in cities, in the city of Edmonton. And
Gas stations as well, I would say, as well.
oh, gas stations, definitely. Gas
With
stations.
underground tanks.
Yeah, and the one thing here, like when talking about gas stations are provincially regulated as well as federally. But when it comes to dry cleaners, the unfortunate part is that dry cleaners are not provincially regulated. They're federally regulated. So information, about these properties is sometimes difficult to find. And with my dad's experience and the fact that he started the business in 1993, he has actually compiled his own database of former dry cleaning sites within the city of Edmonton. And so we have quite a good idea when we're looking at a property to see if there were any type of dry cleaning operations. And we're talking actual physical dry cleaning operations. We're not talking about depots and such, because you see a lot of signs that say, dry cleaning. Well, it's most likely a depot nowadays rather than an actual dry cleaners. So just to give you an idea, if there are no reports for a dry cleaner, and I'm talking something within 25 meters of a property, it will be an automatic phase two if we do not have the information.
Like I said, if I were you, you need a phase two. I'd consider, I'd be very cautious at least, but I would consider walking away from the deal because, gosh, in my days at CMHC, the remediation process could take years and be cost a fortune to do so. Let's spell out the limitations to your report, the things that are not included in your report, Michael, please.
Well, see, and that when we're writing our reports, we provide a somewhat scope of work when it comes to the report. The Canadian Standards Association standard is what we follow, and so if we omit anything from that standard, I would say that the validity of our report would be coming into question.
Yeah.
So when it comes to limitations, and a lot of it has to do regarding a site visit. So a common limitation right now is that ground cover visibility is limited because of the ice and snow. So we're not going to be able to see surface staining. So that's a limitation. We can't access a storage room within a building. That's a limitation. And it's only because, you know, they can say, oh, there's nothing in there. Well, it could turn out that they're storing their the gasoline for their lawnmower and such in these rooms. So it's really, again, just looking at our liability, and so that, you know, we're quite confident when we leave a property that we haven't missed something.
Okay. What are some consequences of not doing an ESA, or getting a poor one, or one that's missing something?
Well, not getting an ESA usually means that you're paying for something with cash, you know,
Yeah.
in the investing sense. So when we are through the process of the ESA, we'll ask the question, have any previous ESAs been conducted on the property? And a lot of the times, no, but there are the times that yes, an ESA was done. Well, we would like to review that ESA just to see, A, we're peer reviewing it to see if anything was missed, but also two, it creates a timeline throughout the process and the history of the property. So a phase one was done in 2005. Well, the property was sold again in 2015. Well, there is the chance that something was missed, a dry cleaners or something, you know, a gas station, or the report was so poorly done previously that they omitted something. And that's where will come in. And unfortunately, through this process, you may have gotten an acceptable phase one from another consultant, but based on our review, there is the potential for a phase two.
Yeah, and you said if you don't get an ESA done, that means you're going to pay cash. That means you're not going to be able to get financing. Is really
Financing?
what it comes down to. Because I agree with you. No lender, especially my former employer, CMHC, would definitely not insure it. I used to manage defaults at CMHC before I became a multifamily underwriter, and when there was an ESA issue with the property, we would pay the claim to the lender, but we would not take title back because it was a liability.
Right.
But it brings me to another question, and this will vary from lender to lender. Maybe you can shed some light on that if you have some knowledge in that regard. But you were talking about asking the current owner, if it's a purchase, let's say, whether they did get an ESE done on the property. There used to be you used to be able to get a letter transmittal. If that was the case, a letter transmittal simply saying that, for example, I'm a new owner, or I'm about to buy this property.
Yeah.
Can I rely on that previous ESA for financing purposes, right? At CMHC, I don't know what the rule is for conventional lenders, being lenders that don't provide mortgage default insurance like CMHC does. It used to be if the ESA was done within a year, if you could get a letter, a transmittal, you could rely on it. Now, I think it's only 1 year, right? If the ESA is no more than a year old, then you can rely on it, but otherwise you got to get a brand new one. Can you shed some light on that? Is that what you're seeing as well, Michael?
Yeah, no, that is what we're seeing. CMHC, what we've been told, it's anywhere from 6 months to 1 year. For the age of the report, and when from our perspective, the reliance or transmittal letter for the report has nothing to do with the purchaser or the seller. It only has to do between us and the lender, who would be CMHC or another major bank. And so when clients ask to receive the reliance letter, the question is why, you know, because that is between us and the lender themselves. It really doesn't have anything to do with the investor, but you know, you are getting financing based on our previous or existing work that we've done. So that's from our perspective. You know, certain lenders will accept a reliance letter for a report that's 5 years old.
They will accept that, you said? Did you just say that?
Yeah, yeah.
Conventional lenders. So that, again, they're not CMHC. Well, it's not going to
Nope.
happen with CMHC. I can guarantee you that. But no, it's important, yeah. And I want to stress what you just said. The ESA is really the property of the lender, and it is addressed to the lender's name. So it's not like Pierre Paul orders the ESA. I pay for it, but it's for the benefit of the lender. Therefore, you as an engineer, your job is to say it is addressed to the lender, and you have to put the lender's name so that they can legally rely on it. It sounds like a small thing, but it's everything.
It's everything.
It's a legal issue, and it's yeah, absolutely. So you pay for the ESA, but it's for the lender's benefit to make sure that there's no contamination on the site.
Yeah.
A couple more things. I remember my days, and of course, I'm not an underwriter anymore, but I do deals once in a while. You used to be able to get, I suggest oftentimes that you get a list of approved engineers to conduct ESAs. Like they want, have you encountered that? Like the lenders want to make sure that they are approved, if you will, engineers to conduct ESAs. Have you run into that? Because I remember that in my days. Like, for example, I had to have your company make sure that the lender was okay with your reports. Have you heard anything like that? Is that still the case? Are you seeing stuff like that?
Well, we don't see that problem anymore with our reports, and I definitely will not comment on other consultants. But the one thing that I know is that, and this goes for Marty, and I can speak for both of us, is that the work that we do after it's completed, I can sleep at night. I don't have any concern,
Well, and I think what I have in mind here, okay, let's be fair. So let's be Edmonton specific. There used to be a particular consultant, engineer consultant, whose report were questionable. Who shall remain nameless, who's no longer on earth. Let's put it this way. We can read between the lines. But I think it's a safe thing. I would suggest, so again, this is the reality on the ground, right? You guys watching this interview, there's no harm in calling your lender, or if it's your mortgage broker, and saying, hey, can you give me a list of approved engineers to conduct an ESA that the lender is going to be happy with? And the broker will know that, and the lender will know that as well. So just to be on the safe side.
Definitely.
Michael, I think we've covered the basics of ESAs. You're with Schurek Resources Limited. I'll provide your contact info. You're with, like I said, Schurek is spelled SCHUR-Tech, TEK, Resources Limited. And so unless you want to add something else, I think that gives people a good background. But the ESA, folks watching this interview, is a very critical step in the process of obtaining financing. It's a must. But again, if you've picked the right people, like the right team, like Michael's firm, to get your ESA, you're going to be covered one way or the other. So Michael, thank you so much for doing this interview, for educating us and our audience in this issue of ESA, environmental site assessments, and wish you well. And thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Paul.
Cheers.